September 19, 1944. Near the town of Münsterbusch, Germany, the pre-dawn air carried the smell of diesel and gunpowder. Tank Commander Staff Sergeant Lafayette Green Poole stood in the open hatch of his Sherman tank, a man on the edge of history. He had orders that morning, no spearheading today. He and his crew were heading home for a war bond tour. Stay on the flank, stay safe. But in war, Poole knew safety was an illusion. This was the third Sherman to bear the name in the mood. The first two had been destroyed. This one would follow soon, and in a battle that would end the most devastating tank-killing spree in American history. To understand Lafayette Poole, the man they called War Daddy long before Hollywood invented the term, we must go back to the heat and dust of South Texas. Born on July 23, 1919, 5 minutes after his twin brother John Thomas, Lafayette Green Poole grew up in the small farming community of Odom. Life was simple and hard. Electricity was a luxury. Water came from hand pumps. Days began before dawn and ended long after sunset. His father, John McKinley Poole, and mother Marion Lee Ruth raised their children on values of hard work, discipline, and service. Lafayette, or Lafe as family called him, learned early how to fix broken equipment, mend fences, and face long days without complaint. By the time he reached Taft High School, Poole's competitive fire was unmistakable. He wasn't just a star athlete, he was a scholar. Graduating in 1937, he earned top marks and a reputation as a young man who excelled in everything he touched. At Corpus Christi College Academy, an all-boys Catholic prep school, he became class valedictorian, proof that intellect could match muscle. Next came Texas College of Arts and Industries, where Poole majored in engineering. It seemed a promising career awaited him in peacetime America. But the world was already unraveling. While studying engineering, Poole found another passion: boxing. Competing in the 165-pound division, he fought with an aggression that mirrored his future in war. Fast, fearless, and calculating. He compiled an extraordinary amateur record, 41 wins, no defeats, and captured the sectional Golden Gloves Championship in New Orleans. The National Golden Gloves invited him to compete in the finals. But Poole turned them down. Engineering called to him more than fame in the ring. Still, the lessons of boxing would stay with him. Discipline, footwork, precision, and the will to strike first and never hesitate. By 1941, Europe was burning. Germany had conquered Poland, France, and much of the continent. Britain stood alone against Hitler's war machine. Japan's empire stretched across Asia. The United States still called itself neutral, but neutrality was wearing thin. Young men across the country faced a choice: wait to be drafted or enlist. On June 14, 1941, 6 months before Pearl Harbor, 21-year-old Lafayette Poole walked into the recruitment office at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio and enlisted in the United States Army. He stood 6'2", weighed 175 pounds, and had the reflexes of a fighter. He would become something else entirely: the deadliest American tank commander of World War II. Poole was assigned to the newly formed 3rd Armored Division, activated only weeks before. It would soon earn its nickname Spearhead. Here, at Camp Beauregard, Poole learned the art of mechanized warfare. He trained on early models, the M3 Lee tank with its awkward dual guns, before the arrival of the M4 Sherman, the workhorse of American armor. The training was relentless. Crews learned to repair engines in the dark, load shells blindfolded, and navigate by stars and terrain alone. Poole's natural aggression and sharp mind set him apart. Officers noticed. He learned to read the battlefield like a boxer reads an opponent, anticipating every move, always attacking first. Poole demanded perfection from his crew. They drilled gunnery and driving until every motion became instinct. He wasn't cruel, Pam, but he was exacting. He knew that in combat, seconds saved meant lives saved. Load, aim, fire, reload. The rhythm became second nature. He earned the respect of his men and their trust, a bond that would define their survival. When offered a commission to become an officer, Poole refused. Officers commanded from map tables. He wanted to command from a turret, where he could see the enemy and fight beside his men. That decision would define his legend. Through 1942 and 1943, the 3rd Armored Division trained across the Mojave Desert, part of General Patton's massive desert training center. Temperatures soared past 110 degrees. Engines overheated. Metal warped. But the desert forged the division into something tougher than steel. Tankers learned to navigate by dead reckoning, maintain vehicles under brutal conditions, and coordinate with infantry and artillery in open terrain. Though they would ultimately fight in Europe, the lessons of the desert proved invaluable. In December 1942, while on leave, Poole married Evelyn Wright. It was a short ceremony, a pause in the storm to come. They would have 8 children, 4 sons, 4 daughters, and a marriage that lasted nearly half a century. Through the war, Evelyn's letters became his lifeline, a reminder that beyond the chaos of battle, there was still love, still purpose. In September 1943, Poole's regiment, the 32nd Armored, boarded troop ships in New York Harbor. The voyage to England took 2 weeks. The Atlantic was rough and cold, haunted by the threat of German U-boats. Convoys zigzagged under gray skies, destroyers patrolling their flanks. Depth charges thundered in the night. But the 3rd Armored Division arrived safely, landing in Liverpool, England. For 9 long months, they would train and wait for the call that would change their lives. The division was stationed near Liverpool and Bristol, perfecting coordination between tankers, infantry, and artillery. They learned to fight in Europe's dense terrain, villages, forests, hedgerows. They rehearsed crossings, defenses, and assaults until every man knew his role. Rumors about the coming invasion, Operation Overlord, spread through the ranks. But no one knew when or where. The waiting tested their nerves. June 6, 1944. The beaches of Normandy were burning. Operation Overlord had begun, and across the English Channel the greatest armada in history was landing on the coast of France. The men of the 3rd Armored Division watched from England, waiting for their turn. They knew their time was coming. By late June, the order finally arrived. The division would follow the initial infantry waves and spearhead the breakout from Normandy. Their mission: push through German defenses, link up with other Allied forces, and drive inland toward Paris. When the division landed on the beaches in late June, the scene was chaos. Wrecked vehicles, burned ships, the smell of salt and oil thick in the air. The hedgerow country of Normandy was a nightmare for tanks. Tall earth walls and narrow lanes turned every field into a fortress. The enemy was dug in, waiting. Poole's crew, driver Wilbert Groundhog Richards, assistant driver PFC Delbert Boggs, gunner Corporal Willis Oler, and loader technician 5th grade Homer McPeak, climbed into their Sherman tank, which Poole named in the mood. They were part of Company Y, 3rd Battalion, 32nd Armored Regiment. Their tank would soon become the most feared weapon in Western Europe. From the first day in combat, Poole fought like a man possessed. He treated each mission like a boxing match, aggressive, controlled, always striking first. On June 27th, near Villiers-Fossard, his platoon ambushed a German column. Within minutes, Poole's gunner, Oler, had destroyed 5 enemy tanks and dozens of trucks. It was a devastating first strike. As the campaign pressed on, the crew moved like a single organism. Richards drove with uncanny instinct, finding cover where there was none. McPeak and Oler loaded and fired with mechanical precision. Poole stood half out of the turret, scanning, shouting, directing fire. He wasn't reckless. He was calculated. He knew the Sherman was no match for a Panther or Tiger head-on, so he used speed and surprise, flanking his enemies, striking from angles they didn't expect. The tank's 76mm gun spoke with brutal rhythm, shells slamming into enemy armor, trucks, and strong points. Poole's motto was simple: always attack, never wait. Over the next weeks, the division pushed through the hedgerows toward St. Lo. The fighting was brutal and slow. Every hedgerow had to be cleared by hand, by shell, or by blood. The roads were lined with destroyed armor, both German and American. Poole's tank seemed untouchable. Crews began to whisper about it. Wherever in the mood went, victory followed. When Operation Cobra began, the massive breakout from Normandy, Poole led from the front. On July 28th, his tank spearheaded a column that destroyed an entire German convoy near Coutances. Trucks, half-tracks, tanks, all burned under the relentless fire of In the Mood. The road was littered with smoking wrecks. His superiors tried to rein him in, but Poole's aggressive tactics worked. Between July and September 1944, He and his crew destroyed over 250 enemy vehicles and killed more than 1,000 enemy soldiers. No other American tanker came close. In every battle, Poole led from the front, never from behind. When the infantry got pinned down, he advanced to draw enemy fire, giving them room to maneuver. His courage became legendary. By August, his reputation had spread through the German lines. Captured soldiers spoke of an American tank commander who attacked like a storm and vanished just as quickly. They called him the Devil of Normandy. Poole and his men were constantly on the move, fighting through France, liberating town after town. At one village, civilians lined the streets, waving flags and shouting, "Vive l'Amérique!" Poole waved back from the turret, smiling for the first time in months. But the war was far from over. Near the Seine River, German resistance stiffened. Panthers and 88mm guns waited in ambush. One afternoon, in the Mood took a direct hit. The tank caught fire. The crew escaped barely. That night, under a sky lit by tracers, Poole was issued a replacement, in the Mood 2. Within days, he was back in action. His second tank was destroyed weeks later near Namur. Belgium, another ambush, another close call. Each time he climbed back into a new Sherman, gave it the same name, and led from the front. The 3rd Armored Division advanced faster than any other U.S. unit in Europe. They cut through Belgium, crossed into Germany, and faced fierce resistance at every turn. By September, they had driven more than 1,500 miles since landing in France. Poole's score stood unmatched: 258 enemy vehicles destroyed, including tanks, armored cars, and gun positions, across 85 days of combat. It was a record no American tank commander would ever surpass. Then came September 19, 1944, the day everything changed. That morning, Poole's company was ordered to advance toward Münsterbusch, Germany. They were to stay in reserve. Poole wasn't supposed to fight that day. He was scheduled to return home for a war bond tour, the Army's way of showing off its heroes. But fate had other plans. Reports came in of German activity ahead, a convoy retreating through a wooded road. Poole's instincts told him to strike. He ordered his crew forward. In the Mood, the 3 rolled into the open. The first shell came from nowhere. A German 88mm anti-tank gun hidden in a barn fired at point-blank range. The explosion ripped through the Sherman's hull. The tank erupted in flames. The blast threw Poole clear of the turret, unconscious, his leg shattered. His gunner and driver survived. His assistant driver and loader were killed instantly. When he woke, he was in a field hospital. The doctors told him his right leg would have to be amputated. His war was over. For the man who had lived and breathed the battlefield, the silence was unbearable. But Poole faced it the way he had faced everything, head on. He spent months in rehabilitation, learning to walk again with a prosthetic leg. When offered a discharge, he refused. He stayed in uniform, training young tankers, passing on what he had learned. The Army awarded him the Distinguished Service Cross, the Legion of Merit, the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, and the French Croix de Guerre. Yet he never bragged about his record. When asked how he'd destroyed so many enemy vehicles, he simply said, "I had the best crew in the world." After the war, Poole returned to Texas. He finished his education, became a Baptist minister, and devoted his life to faith and family. The man who had once led armored columns through fire now led congregations in prayer. He rarely spoke of the war. When asked about it years later, he said quietly, "I fought because it was my duty, and I came home because God spared me." Lafayette Green Poole passed away on May 30, 1991, at the age of 71. Today his name remains etched into the history of American armor. He was the embodiment of the 3rd Armored Division spirit. Fast, fearless, and relentless. In just 85 days of combat, Lafayette Poole became the most successful American tank commander of World War II. His story is one of courage, skill, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his crew. He was, and remains, the spearhead,